How's it going, guys? Alan with Frost Collectibles. Today we're going to be going over cards for grading. What to grade, when to grade it, what to look out for as far as pitfalls for grading, some things you might think are small in the eyes of PSA, SGC, Beckett that are not small, things that they won't grade so harshly that you might think are a big deal. So I've got a few groups of different types of cards here, and I'm going to go over a little bit of all of it with you and kind of show you what I look for when I'm sending in a submission. So right off the bat, what I'm looking at is pop reports on stuff. I know there's a lot of cards I have. Sometimes it gets too much looking through your whole collection and trying to find 100 cards, 200 cards to send in. I send in 150, 200 at a time. And I could do that every day for the next 3 months and not have all the cards that I need graded. So I look for certain stuff. I look for trends in the market. I look for the ultra modern stuff, for players that are doing well or projected to do well, such as, the J-Rod, Jeremy Pena, that kind of stuff. I'm going to start out with one of the more difficult categories here, which is 80s cards. And 80s cards are surprising in a couple facts. Is raw, these cards sell for $5, $10, $15 at most. Now, you get them back in a 9 or a 10, and they're worth $100, $500, $700. The return versus risk on a card that you know is in great condition is totally worth it. So what I will do is I will look through my complete stack of, say, Mark McGwire's. And I've set aside 5 here. Now, these have all been looked at, pre-scanned. You got to have one of these, honestly, if you want to grade anything. If you think your cards look good, take a second look through something like this. A regular magnifying glass is not going to cut it. You really need something like this that has a light that does ×10 magnification. And you'd be blown away what some of your supposedly minty junk wax cards look like under magnification. And that's why 10s are extremely hard to get. You're talking cards that are almost 40 years old at this point. The McGwire 85 tops, this card's 38 years old at this point. Roger Clemens, I got 4 set aside. Now, when I tell you I looked through 50 Roger Clemens rookies to set these 4 aside, that's the truth. I'm not going to submit them if there's any way I'm going to lose money on the transaction. If they're not 9s or 10s, they're not worth submitting. I can sell it as a minty, near mint, raw card for 15, 20 bucks. The grading fee's 20, that's 40 bucks. If you get an 8, you're losing money on that deal. So if I'm not confident that I'm going to get 9s or 10s on these, they're not going to get submitted. But like I said, what'll blow you away is that these cards in 10s are $700, $800, $900 cards. So if you get a very good looking example and you've looked at it under magnification, it is absolutely worth submitting. To get even a little further down that rabbit hole, even you go to like 81 tops, 81 Donruss, Harold Baines, Tim Raines, Kurt Gibson, who's not even a Hall of Famer, Fernando Valenzuela, who's not a Hall of Famer. The last PSA 9 Kurt Gibson I saw sold for $200. The last 10 sold for $600. 81 tops was pretty notorious for having miscut cards. Luckily I have enough to look through that I can find 4 or 5 good examples of all of the big 81 cards. I'm a big fan of the 81 Tim Raines Donruss. Donruss in 81 had great card stock. Their cards held up well. Fleer, if you can get them with good photo registration and good centering. Again, these are all cards that sell for multiple hundreds when they are in 9 and 10 condition. I'm going to go back to 85 for a little bit. Well, we'll go over 80, another 80, 81. The Ricky Hendersons, you know, those are worth grading. Ricky Henderson's my guy. This card is borderline a 7 or 8. It's really well centered, but it's got a little bit of a rough edge on the bottom. It's not a perfect card. It's still a card I'm going to submit because it's still worth more in a 7 than it is raw, and the chance of getting an 8 is decent. Now, when we go back to vintage, I'm going to pull out just a little bit of vintage here. So I've got a 65 Steve Carlton rookie. I've got a second year Bob Gibson 61 in amazing shape. And I've got a 1960 Al Kaline card here. The Steve Carlton is in beautiful shape, perfectly centered. The only problem with it is it's got a rough bottom edge. For vintage cards, the reason they're worth so much is because Topps had tons of issues during the 50s, 60s, even in the 70s. This Al Kaline, not very well centered at all. Great photo registration, one little minor ink blot there in the corner, but sharp corners, no surface flaws. This is still a card worth submitting. I think I paid 20 bucks for it. If it comes back a 5 or a 6. Anyway, the 61 Bob Gibson. This is Bob Gibson's second year. And he had quite possibly the best year ever pitching in all of baseball, 1968. He had less than a 2 ERA. He had, I can't remember all the stats, 24 complete games. And his ERA was below 2, which is absolutely insane. A big tip when it comes to grading is you need to know what you paid for the card. You need to know what your fee is and what your possible resale value is. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen tons of people that do PSA unboxings. When you're submitting your cards for grading, I always go on the lower end. If I think the card could possibly get a 9, I'm going to mark it down as an 8. If I'm not making money as an 8, it's not getting submitted. And that's just the way it's going to be. Because, you know, the grading companies aren't as reliable as they used to be. They've gotten stricter over time. It's just the nature of the game with a lot more collectors out there, a lot more people submitting cards out there. It's gotten tougher and tougher for grades. And then there's some stuff that I'm going to grade no matter what, like 1988 Fleer basketball. This Jordan is off center, but it has perfect corners, perfect edges, flawless surface. The Reggie Miller 88 rookie, a lot better centered, almost perfect, you know, 60-40. But these type of cards, unless you think you're going to get a PSA 5 on them or something like that, these are cards that are worth submitting no matter what. Cards that you know are probably pop 1 or very low pop cards are always worth submitting. These cards, they're not anything super crazy, but a very cool set. Topps pristine, 1967 World Series champions. So these are whatever team won the World Series in that year, and it's got a game-used patch from one of the star players. 1976 World Series champ, St. Louis Cardinals, Orlando Cepeda. 1974 World champ, Rollie Fingers. Great cards. I look up the pop report on stuff like this. There's tons of Orlando Cepeda fans. There's tons of Raleigh Finger fans. These are cards that are going to sell. And their Topps Pristine had some of the best card stock, some of the best cuts, some of the best product out there. On most Topps Pristine from the early 2000s that I send in, it all comes back 9s and 10s. 1991 Barry Bonds Topps Desert Shield. I wouldn't care if this card got a 5. It's going in my PC for 19 bucks. The Desert Shield, you know, these were only sent to people over in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Very hard to find cards, very valuable cards. 1971 Topps, one of the hardest sets of all time to get in high grade. All black borders. If you find one in good shape, look at the pop report. See how many of them are in 7s, 8s, 9s. A lot of cards from 71 have 0 10s. So you find one that you know will grade high, and of course, if it's a popular Hall of Famer, it's getting submitted. Even the 85 Dwight Gooden, you know, he was in 84 Topps, he was in 84 Fleer Update, he was in 84 Topps Update as well. Those are cards that are going no matter what. Rare 90s inserts. And when I say rare, I mean rare. This might look like a modern Mojo refractor, but this is a 1998 showcase showpiece, Frank Thomas, numbered out of 250. This card is in mint condition. If it comes back a 10, I bet it's a pop 1 or 2. You're going to find a Frank Thomas fan who's willing to pay $300, $400 for that card. Getting into a little more of the modern stuff. Clayton Kershaw, Bowman rookie, this kind of stuff you need to look at, because in a PSA 8, it's worth almost as much as they are raw. Back to the Topps Pristine argument here. This is Upper Deck, Threads of Time, Raleigh Finger, numbered to 350. These cards were beautiful. All of these Topps tributes, these are all Hall of Famers, the year that they were inducted, and it either has a jersey or relic piece from every single one of them. 82 Brooks Robinson, 82 Frank Robinson, 83 Brooks Robinson, 82 Frank Robinson, 89 Johnny Finch, 1985 Lou Brock. These jersey and bat relic cards from the early 2000s that were real jersey and real bat relic cards, not just fake ones that were, hey, we had these guys try them on for 1 second and had them take them right back off so we could say that it's a game or a authentic worn jersey. These ones are all game-used, authentic jerseys and bat relics. Some more obscure stuff. 92 Derek Jeter Classic. This is the foil version, the classic draft. Something you check the pop report on. If it was something I thought would grade lower than an 8, I wouldn't submit it. And a 10, they're $500 cards. The Michael Jordan 91 SP. The last sold one I saw went for $2,000. The last PSA 10. I'm submitting 4 of them here in this lot, and I think 2 of them have chances at 10s and 2 have chances at 9s. 88 Jordan All-Star. I got one back in a 9 in my last batch, and it sold for $450. This one, I think, possible 9, another, $450. As long as your margins make sense after your grading fees, it's absolutely worth doing. Evan Longoria, I think a lot of people sleep on him. Look at his WAR, look at his statistics. As long as he plays a few more years well, he's getting into the Hall of Fame. Frank Thomas, 50 Years of Leaf throwback. Now this is a special card because it's also a Donruss Collections. They only made 500 of these, I believe. So double check that. It's the throwback to the famous 1990 Leaf Frank Thomas card. Now, junk wax. We're going to talk about this really quick. out of 80 Ken Griffey Jr., Donruss, and Fleer rookie cards. Out of 80 that I took straight out of binders and collections, I think I set less than 10 aside. So you have to be strict on what you're going to send in on stuff like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 leaf that I set aside out of that batch. Because for the Ken Griffey Jr. rookies, raw they sell for $2 or $3. In a 9, they're selling for 40 to 50. In 10s, they're $150, $200 cards. If you're not confident on 9s and 10s, don't submit them. Greg Maddux Leaf. Okay, Leaf was a lot more rare than the Donruss. Look at the price on what a PSA 10 or a PSA 9 Greg Maddux Leaf sells for. Not Donruss, Leaf. Donruss is going to be 1/5 or 1/3 the price of the Leaf. 83 tops. You got 3 Hall of Famers this year. There's no Tony Gwynn in this set. I set them aside. These are just Wade Boggs and Ryan Sandbergs. Again, these are cards that even in 8s and 9s, depending on what you paid for them, are worth it to submit. Look at them closely. Grading companies are getting harsher on grading. Look at them closely. As long as you're confident on, making your money back on what you spent on the card, plus your grading fee, plus at least 30% profit. Verlander first year Bowman Chrome. That's the kind of card you can take a pretty quick look at under magnification and know what kind of a grade you're going to get. Tatis, Topps Chrome, Sepia Refractor. Quick look at that. You know what you're going to get. Pretty close for a grade. Ken Griffey Jr., Bellingham. No matter what, it's getting submitted. This is a 2012 Topps Gypsy Queen, Mike Trout, with the rare straight cut back. These sell for a couple $100 raw, and that one's in mint condition. There's certain cards that, like I said, I would submit no matter what. Freddie Freeman, Orange, Refractor, Topps Chrome. It's in amazing shape. The 2 cards next to it, second year Randy Johnson, Desert Shield, Ricky Henderson, Desert Shield. Those are going no matter what. If I don't get the grades that I want for these, they're going in the PC. Totally fine with that. Eddie Murray, Desert Shield. Wander Franco, 2020 Optic, rated prospect, auto, numbered out of 99. If it gets a 10, very valuable card. Wander Franco, I still think is severely underrated. He was the #1 prospect for a couple years in the minors for a reason. He's legit. He's going to make big moves in the next couple years. Topps Pristine again, one of my favorite. Barry Bonds in the gap, jersey relic, numbered to 1,000. Even if this had scratches on it, I would send it in because it's going in my PC. This Clayton Kershaw isn't a Bowman Chrome, but it's a blue, numbered to 999. Number 399, I'm sorry. So no matter what, that's something that would get graded. The moral of the story, look closely at your cards. Know what you've got invested money-wise into them. Always expect less than you on the lower end of your grade. If you think you're between a 9 or a 10, assume you're going to get a 9. Be excited when you get the 10. Assume you're going to get a 9. If you're not going to get your money back at a 9 and it's not for your PC, don't submit it. Assume that you're going to get the lower end of the spectrum and be excited when you get the higher end of your spectrum. There's a lot of times I submit groups of cards. I mean, if you could make $20 off of every one of these that gets submitted, all 9 of these Griffies, if I can make $20 off all 9 of these Griffies after submission, then that was an amazing purchase, because these will sell quick in a PSA 9 on eBay. They'll sell quick. All of this stuff will. These are all named, these are all Hall of Famers. These are all all-star players, prospects. Some of the stuff is really tough. Out of these 12 1986 tops traded Bo Jacksons, there was only one that I considered submitting. And honestly, it's got an ink spot. I don't know if I would submit it. Now, if it came back a 10, that'd be amazing. But I'm going to assume the low side. And if I'm not making my money back on it, it's not worth doing. So that's the tips for today. Always know what you're in the card for. Know what your grading fee is. Know what profit you're going to make. Assume you're going to get the grade lower than, the 2 that you're expecting. You always want to have a margin of a 7 or an 8, an 8 or a 9, a 9 or a 10. Assume the lowest. Be excited if you get the higher end. But you got to be able to make profit. If all of them come back 9s and you're expecting all 10s, you can lose out on a lot of money that way. That's about all I got for today on the things to watch out for when grading. Hopefully you liked the video. Stay tuned. I have a PSA unboxing coming in the next few days. Rare 90s inserts. And there's some really good stuff in there. I've taken a little peek. I know there's 7 or 8 pop ones just in this next group of 15 or 20 that I'm going to pull out. So stay tuned. Frost Collectibles, Alan here. Thanks for watching.